Sevhead Creative at sevhead.com presents the audio web series Epyphany, Born from the Sea, written and produced by Don Sev Severance and narrated by Professor Proteus. Episode 10, Chapter 26. The Ship. Epyphany and the tribe had been swimming steadily for several days, all in peak condition, fully capable of traveling for hours without rest. From the cavern, Bliss continued to monitor the situation. Though she still couldn't pinpoint his exact position, she felt her connection to Thoreau growing stronger, confident that he was closing in on the tribe. It wouldn't be long before the tribe encountered the silver fin. The weather had been favorable until the 5th day. The morning began sunny and mild, but as the day wore on, the seas began to swell and the wind picked up speed. Reefer managed to stay a few miles ahead, but the rising wind was working against him. Epyphany felt a low vibration just moments before Reefer spotted the ship. She could sense the alarm in his message. "This looks more like an island than a ship. I hope Bliss..." No sooner had she lost contact with Reefer, Epyphany felt Bliss connect. She signaled the tribe to proceed quickly and cautiously. Against the darkening sky, Epyphany could make out the vague outline of the silver fin. The ocean raged, crashing against the sheer steel walls, but the gigantic ship stood firm as if anchored to the ocean floor. The rising wind carried the clanging sounds of chains and pulleys, levers and conveyors, cranes and swinging mechanical arms, all working in a sad symphony of destruction. Epyphany understood Reefer's reaction when she finally saw the monstrous trawler herself. The frightening red logo, 3 stories high, staring out through the fog and mist, sent a chill down her spine. The ship was so massive that it created anomalies in the air pressure as the wind slid along its colossal hull. Small waterspouts popped up intermittently around the ship, sometimes leaving the surface and growing into tornadoes before dissipating into the powerful wind. Saja took a couple of days off to recover from her meltdown. She was strong and wasn't about to let her power slip away without a fight. When Thoreau disappeared, she had the foresight to alert her global contacts to monitor their sources for any sign of the Samudra Hantu. Eventually, he showed up in Bali. Saja decided to have him tailed. Knowing his ship was equipped with state-of-the-art technology, including surveillance equipment, she ordered her men to be discreet. The ocean team stayed far behind, using satellites and high-altitude reconnaissance to track his movements. Saja received a report that he was headed to India, possibly Mumbai, which coincidentally was central to Pisces' Indian Ocean operations. Though Saja knew Thoreau had friends in Bollywood, she imagined how nice it would be if they could capture footage of Thoreau and his ship in close proximity to a Pisces vessel. Chapter 27. Intersection. The wind's powerful blasts grew steadily stronger, and the rolling seas began to hinder the yacht's progress. Thoreau was on high alert. "Samu, scan for any vessels nearby, then expand your search." Samu instantly replied. "There's a large stationary trawler about 5 miles off our heading and a smaller vessel matching our speed, 9 miles behind. I also detect a small pod of activity near the trawler and a large bird flying erratically toward us, quite possibly on a collision course. Do you have a visual on the bird?" The monitor lit up, showing a blurry image of an impossibly large pelican struggling to stay airborne. "My God! It's Reefer! Samu, slow down and extend the lift net." Watching the monitor, Thoreau focused all his mental energy, trying to tap into his memories of Ujjayi. He recalled the language. Now, he just needed to project. He stared at the screen and concentrated. "Reefer. This is Thoreau. If you're in trouble, land in the net." Thoreau ran topside as Samu worked to anticipate Reefer's trajectory. Reefer had been trying to describe the trawler to Epyphany when a blast of air swept him up, hurling him toward the ship's massive structure. Before he could compensate, another gust came from below, sending him swirling skyward. The twister spat him out above the trawler, where another stream of air put him into a tailspin. He momentarily regained control, just in time to avoid smashing into the giant crane used for the oversized nets. Disoriented and weakened, he did his best to glide. Catching the next violent thermal, he ceased his struggle, letting the wind take him where it would. In a moment, he saw a large, streamlined yacht in the distance. The wind was carrying him swiftly toward the unusual craft. Hearing a familiar voice in his head, he recognized Thoreau's image and life-saving message. Using the last of his strength, he steered straight for the boat. Samu slowed to a near stop and maintained her course. Then, splash! Reefer hit the water. Thoreau gave Samu the signal. They raised him up and gently set him on the deck. "Sorry, Reefer, no time for pleasantries. I'm getting a strong signal from the tribe." Reefer, barely able to think straight, tried to relax as Thoreau instructed. "Samu, full ahead to the trawler." Saja's team faced their own problems. The overhead surveillance was useless due to the weather, and the overcast skies and electrical storm were interfering with satellite transmissions, making communications sketchy. Fearing they'd lose him, they decided to close in on Thoreau. Epyphany was worried about Reefer, but she had no time to check on him. The storm was gaining strength, and her team was growing nervous. The unexpected weather posed a challenge, but without a signal from Bliss, they had to stick to the plan. Relying on her intuition and psychic powers, she was already picking up an uneasy vibe from the crew on the Silver Fin. Most of the heavy machinery had ceased to operate, and the nets were up. Unfortunately, the catch was well into the processing stage. Epyphany hoped Bliss was aware of their circumstances and waited for a signal or a sign. On board the trawler, the captain had moved up his timetable, anticipating the storm. As a result, his catch was less than expected, but it was still a profitable catch for the Silver Fin's maiden voyage. The storm spooked his rookie crew, but so far the ship was performing admirably. Bliss could feel the tension. She hadn't anticipated the chain of events in play and was unsure how the electrical storm would affect her projection abilities. But so far, she was able to manage the barrage of data entering her consciousness. She would have to act soon and needed to send a lasting message to Pisces Corp. Bliss transmitted her new plan. When Epyphany received the message, she hesitated. She hoped Bliss wasn't overestimating her vocal abilities. The turn of events left the tribe with little to do. The storm was wearing them down. Their energy and morale were low. When Epyphany transmitted the new plan, it was like a spark that ignited the whole tribe. They would work closely together to create an hypnotic illusion. It was as dangerous as their previous encounter with Pisces Corp, but it had a mystical appeal that resonated with all the inhabitants of Ujai, and the weather would work in their favor. The tribe made their way to the rear of the ship, where the daily catch was hoisted from the water and deposited on the loading platform. The waves momentarily calmed, but the wind still whipped up curtains of mist and fog. Epyphany positioned herself center stage. If anyone happened to be standing on the loading platform, they would see her beautiful visage bobbing sensually on the rolling sea. With the rest of the tribe spread out behind her, Epyphany began to sing. Each tribe member picked a note, and with their otherworldly sonic language, they harmonized and amplified the effect of Epiphany's song. At first, the small delicate parts of the ship began to vibrate, then cables hummed with sympathetic tones. The lowest notes reverberated through the interior walls until the entire ship vibrated to the music. It wasn't long before a few crew members started making their way toward the source of the sound. Their curiosity led them hesitantly to the platform. Soon, others in the lower decks, detecting the sound, started opening doors and searching hallways, winding their way toward the mysterious music. The captain, still monitoring the storm on the far side of the ship, was unaware of the performance taking place only 200 yards away. Now most of the crew were standing on the platform, excited and engaged like awestruck fans at a rock concert. The tribe held their notes, while Epyphany continued to mesmerize. The wind picked up, and the rough sea began to affect the silver fin. Epyphany moved closer to the platform. Through the thin veil of fog and swirling mist, she rose out of the water, taunting the young sailors. As she had hoped, one man finally got the idea to haul in this mermaid and her choir of fish. Ignoring the obvious danger, the rest of the men joined in the task, hoping for the catch of a lifetime. The ship started to rock. The waves danced and the wind howled. The eerie sound of Ujai's magic choir rose and was carried away in the wind. Not far away, Thoreau and Reefer heard the music, a hauntingly beautiful song whispered in the wind, guiding them through the storm, filling their hearts and giving them hope. They couldn't see the trawler through the fog and high seas, but they knew they were close. A short distance behind the Samudra Hantu, Saja's men heard it too. But despite their training, these hardened, battle-proven mercenaries felt a chill in their hearts and the unfamiliar sensation of fear. The captain suddenly looked up from the screens. Lights flashed, bells rang, buzzers buzzed, and strange music filled the cabin. He started to panic. The silver fin was listing from side to side. Sitting perfectly still under the spiral coil, Bliss remained calm. There was nothing more she could do but monitor the event. She dared not interfere until the others made their choices. For now, her job was to react. Time slowed as she counted the seconds, waiting for her move. Epyphany and the tribe pretended not to notice as the crew fought the elements, trying to manage the complex machinery. For the plan to succeed, timing had to be perfect. Once the nets were underwater, the crew would let them sink, then haul them in quickly to scoop up Epyphany and the tribe. Machines whirred to life, chains clanked through pulleys, nets splashed into the water, and cranes swung wildly in the wind. Completely under the spell, the men were oblivious to the hazard they were creating. As soon as the nets hit the water, Irie and Zip swam to safety. Storm, Dali, and Epyphany maintained the illusion, while Magnum dove down to intercept and weaken the net. A young officer gave the signal, and the nets rose quickly. The crew was so intent on their special catch that all precautions were forgotten. As the nets surfaced, first one crane, then another, swung out beyond their center of gravity. A chain winch jammed, twisting the net. The wind caught the twisted net, billowing it like a sail and stressing the cranes further. When Epyphany saw the sailor raise his hand, she signaled to dive. Magnum hadn't quite finished his work, but he managed to slip through the weakened net. Storm led the way, intending to widen the hole and increase the tension on the already strained cables. They were all surprised when the first attempt only slowed the rising net temporarily, but failed to break through. Magnum quickly swam back to help, furiously chopping away at the thick netting while Storm powered against it with all his might. Dali had managed to slip through a smaller gap, but Epyphany was nowhere to be seen. When the fog thinned and Thoreau saw the silver fin, he was shocked to see this enormous ship heeling dangerously, lights flashing and alarms blaring. Through the mist, he glimpsed a scene of total chaos on the fishing platform. He and Reefer both felt the distress radiating from the tribe. Thoreau immediately put Samu on emergency alert, and they were at the scene in seconds. Thoreau took over as pilot, expertly navigating the churning sea toward the disaster area. Reefer, in direct contact with the tribe, relayed the grim news to Thoreau. The tribe was safe, but Epyphany was missing. Thoreau focused his mind, scanning for any sign of her. Nothing. Then he saw her. She was unconscious, tangled in a net, swinging precariously at the end of a broken crane. Below, twisted steel and cables littered the water. The trawler continued to sway, and the crane looked ready to snap off and tumble into the sea at any moment. The mermaid spell was broken, and the crew scattered. Some were washed overboard, the rest fleeing to the safety of their cabins. Thoreau turned to Reefer. "Are you ready to fly?" Reefer nodded. "I think I know what you're planning. I might be able to carry Epyphany a short distance, but the net's weight will be too much. If I can get close enough to the platform and extend my lift net over the wreckage, you just need to guide her down." "What about the tangled net?" "I have lasers mounted on board. Samu can lock onto the target and cut the net above and below simultaneously. We have to move fast. That crane could crash any second." Thoreau issued commands to Samu and carefully steered his yacht through the labyrinth of snapped chains and broken beams. The wind and rain made the already complex task nearly impossible, but there was no other choice. Bliss, sensing Thoreau's intentions, understood perfectly. Turning her attention back to the captain, she waited. Thoreau positioned the lift net as close as he could manage. Reefer would have to fly Epyphany down at a steep angle, while Samu tracked and cut the nets. Thoreau looked up at Epyphany, hanging helplessly, swinging in the wind, her life in his hands. Her eyes fluttered open. She gazed directly into his and smiled. Thoreau gave the nod to Reefer. Struggling against the powerful wind, Reefer circled swiftly above the crane, then dove straight toward Epyphany. Milliseconds before Reefer made contact, Samu fired the lasers. The tangled net fell away into the wind as Reefer wrapped his large webbed feet around Epyphany. Though she was free from the crane, she was still enclosed in a substantial amount of netting. Instantly, Reefer realized the weight was more than he could support. Thoreau realized in horror that they were going to miss the lift net. The scene unfolded in slow motion. He saw Reefer lose his grip and heard his squawk of alarm. Epyphany plummeted toward the deadly shards of steel below. Reefer had to glide off to the side to avoid the wind-blown netting. Time slowed, then seemed to stop entirely. No more than 10 feet from a razor-sharp sheet of stainless steel, Epyphany froze in mid-air. The ocean rose, wrapping her in a giant sphere of water. The waves swelled and gently carried her towards Samu. Epyphany floated onto the net as the giant droplet merged with the next wave. The crashing waves resumed and debris still threatened. Samu maneuvered them to safety while Thoreau winched in the net and lowered Epyphany onto the deck. With the help of his bots, he got her onto a dolly and rolled her to the interior holding tank, gently sliding her into the shallow end. She had passed out during the fall. Her breathing was steady, but very slow. The captain had been temporarily paralyzed by Bliss's thought cloud, frozen in front of the screen, thinking, "This must be a nightmare. My crew is trying to catch a giant whale, a mermaid, and her dolphin friend." Suddenly the room went black. The only sound was the creak of the straining hull as his ship was battered by the elements. Her body drenched in sweat, Bliss opened her eyes and felt the tower still vibrating beneath her feet. We thank you for listening to another installment of this series. There are many more chapters to come, So we hope you subscribe and hit the bell so you can continue to join Epyphany and her tribe as they navigate the stormy seas into the transition.